Here, give me a phone.
Welcome everyone to the Tourist Development Council Beach Improvement Committee. My name is Matt Boucher. I'll be the chair. And I think we're gonna have some good speakers today, so it should be interesting, at least I think it's gonna be. I think everybody's here that's expected to be here. So without further ado, we'll do the approval of the agenda. Oh, I guess we can do introductions, I'm sorry, and roll call. Laura Lee Thompson,
Here.
Mr. Venuto,
Here.
Dr. DeFries,
Present.
Ms. Parrish,
Present.
and Mr. Jocelyn.
Present here.
And we've also got the director, Peter Kranis,
Hello, welcome.
and Ms. Essing, our operations manager. So approval of the minutes. Has everybody taken a look at them, and do we have a motion to approve or any changes? I move to approve. We have a motion to approve by Mr. Jocelyn. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Dr. DeFries seconds that. So that's approved. Also, if there's any board members have any conflict of interest with today's, I don't think we have any action items. But any agenda items or any other business relationships between the board. If there's none of that, then we'll move forward as well. Approval of the minutes of March 14th. Does anybody have anything to add or delete to those minutes? If there are none, then do we have a motion to accept those minutes?
Motion to accept the minute.
Motion by Mr. Venuto. And do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
And a second by Ms. Thompson. So that's approved as well.
And we can go vote.
Can we get, have a vote for that? All in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
And so approved. Mr. Kranis, do you want to give us the beach update?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Well, welcome to everyone. Glad to see everybody here today. Mike McGarry is off this week, so I'll be just giving a quick update. Of course, we're in the middle of turtle season, so a lot of the activity related to the beach has been suspended anyhow, but there's a lot going on in preparation for the fall. If you might recall, we did receive quite a bit of damage with Ian and Nicole. It caused us to start about a $25 million project in the South Beaches. South Beaches are kind of south of Spessart Holland, all the way down to just north of Sebastian Inlet. That's the most narrow portion of the beach in the county, and it with quite a bit of erosion. They started the project. I want to say they got maybe a third or maybe a little bit more, not quite halfway done with it, with really bringing in actually truckloads of sand. Then it hit turtle season, so they had to pull off the beach. But they will be back in November to finish that project. So the way those funds work, and that, as you may recall at our last meeting, that this is what really caused us concern and worry about whether we would have enough funds in our beach fund to do other things like the IRL grants, et cetera. But all of those funds have to come from us initially. Now we believe we're going to get, believe it's 87.5% back from FEMA. So that's the thought. You never know until you submit your funds, your reimbursement to them and see where they come through. It usually takes 2 to 3 years. So we'll know more probably next year on where we are with that. But that's going to cause a lot of cash outlay initially, and then hopefully we'll get reimbursement. On the other other beaches, the Mid Reach and the South Reach. So the Mid Reach runs from just south of Patrick to about Indian Harbor, and then from Indian Harbor down to about Melbourne Beach, right where Spessard Holland is. Those two beaches also received a lot of damage. In fact, it's a much longer stretch of beach and a much wider stretch of beach, so a lot more funding is going to be necessary. However, our understanding as it is today, we don't have a final word from the Army Corps, but they're going to be beginning a $70 million project in the fall timeframe. We don't know exactly when that's going to start. There's some other activities that are having to take place before they begin work, but we think hopefully in the fall or at least early 24. It's a huge project, as you can imagine, a lot of work, a lot of sand. We don't know, the piece that we don't know yet is what is the share going to be from us. So the 70 million we know for sure is coming from the Army Corps, but we don't know how much more they might be asking from us. It could be up to 8 million is what we originally budgeted last year. So it's possible that they would ask for that amount, or it's possible they could ask for a little bit less, depending on how the project goes. So when Mike gets back, he'll be working. As always, he works very closely with them, and he'll kind of figure out where they're at, but they haven't given him the final numbers yet. So we're prepared. We've got, fortunately, we have some, the funds in the account right now. So if they do ask for the full amount, we have it. If they ask for less, then that's great, because then that's money that we could hold for other needs or future needs. I think that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what's going on. Like I said, we're sort of in a wait and see mode on both of those big projects, and it's close to almost $100 million we're putting on the beaches in Brevard in the next year and a half. So a lot coming forth for us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. We've got several speakers that I'm interested in hearing. The first one is from Brevard County Natural Resource Department, and that's Mr. Matt Culver. Welcome, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. My name is Matt Culver. I manage the Boating Waterways program for the county. And I'm here to touch on a program that the TDC and the beach committee here are supporting currently through the lagoon funds from last year, the ongoing project. And so first of all, there's a lot of boats in Brevard. Just some general information here. Everyone knows over 120 miles of waterways linearly, a couple hundred square miles of waterway, over 1 million boats registered in the state of Florida, and about 35,000 in our county, with over 100,000 that use our waterways, if you're counting Osceola and Orange County to come and use our waterway. So with that said, that leaves a lot of boats in our water, and unfortunately a lot of debris. So I just wanted to show this first, just to show that derelict vessels, abandoned vessels are a continuing problem. This is a map of vessels that were sunk in our waterways. Right when I started, I've been doing this for about 15 years, taking boats out for the county. And that's about 71 vessels back in 2006. You hit the next one for me. And this is just from last Friday. This is from FWC's website, which shows about 64 vessels sunk in our waterways now. So we've taken out 300 plus vessels since the first map I showed you for this one, but it shows you it's a continuing problem. I will say that a lot of these boats have been taken out by us already. That's just, they haven't updated their database yet, but that shows you many of those are a result of storms from last year. We're still catching up from the 2 hurricanes that came through last year. As I kind of just mentioned, we've taken about 300 boats in about the past 15 years, over almost 900 tons of material taken out of the waterway, not to mention the fuel and oil in those boats and the associated batteries in those boats too. Why do we do it? It may seem obvious, but just in case it's for recreation, for tourism. Obviously, when people are coming over 520, 528, and they see a bunch of stuff, they come to our nice beaches, And they see boats in the water, like, it kind of doesn't give a good impression first thing when they're coming through here. Next thing is, there are hazards to navigation, a partially sunken boat. That's in deep water is much more of a hazard than many on the boat. A boat on the shoreline is a hazard to the environment, say mangrove or seagrasses in the shallows, but a sunken boat is a hazard to a boater who may be out there early morning, late at night, who's cruising along and may not know that there's something right over the waterway. It's actually, it could be a safety hazard for active boater. So, what are we doing right now? So I want to mention there's ongoing projects. The TDC, so through the Lagoon Fund, you guys were able to support us in the amount of about $146,975 last year. So that said, we're also working in the coordination of 2 other grants through Florida Fish and Wildlife. One of those for 85 and another one for 146. So we're in the middle of a project to take out about 52 boats, 52 of those 64 that were on that map that I showed initially. So with about $370,000, 20 of those boats, I expect about 20 to be funded by TDC. So I'm kind of skipping around, or the funding is still active that I've gotten from the TDC because of the fact that I have 3 grants going at once. So I've been jumping around from boat to boat, and FWC has a really short time frame on their grants. So we're actively taking boats out. These are just some pictures. Again, you can see the actual Lagoon Life logo on my contractor's boat there. It may be kind of small, but we did make sure he had that put on the side of his push boat. So he's not always in that boat, but that's had a lot of the removals. So, and these are some pictures. Actually, the one up there in the top right-hand side, just last Friday near O'Galley. If you pay attention, there's a Channel 13 doing a nice piece on it. They asked some of the neighbors and did a quick interview about, hey, what's going on with, where the funding coming from and all that. And TDC was mentioned on that. So over the past 15 years, we've been about including this project, about $1.3 million to cover the boats we've removed. A lot of that has been, the majority has been grant money. You can see some of the partners listed up there, all this group, but also FWC, the Florida Inland Navigation District has also been a big partner in this removal. So, one more there. Okay, so if people ask what's going on, how come these people can just leave their boats in the water and nothing's happening? How come we're not forcing these people to take their boats out? So we are working. So in the past, law enforcement was so the first 5 years I did this, law enforcement was not actively pursuing the owners of these boats after they sunk. Actually, with the state attorney's office, it's not prosecuting these people. At this point, I've been able to coordinate with the local state attorney's office to let them know that we've spent $1 million, so we need to get this money back. And currently, they've been working to prosecute many of these people. A lot of these boats, they're not, these aren't mega yachts. This is not Miami. A lot of these boats that sink are clunkers. A lot of the people may have actually been living on them. Many people are deceased. So they do track the owners down. I turn over any of the invoices I have for particular boats along with photos. They bring those in front of the judge with the owner if they have the owner. And so they've been able to, they can either put a hold on the person's license. So when I get people calling me, so they can put a hold on their license or a hold on their next registration of their next boat or their car. So now I get people calling me last minute saying, they said I owe money. What can I do? And they call up the county and I'm like, well, you owe money. And I pulled up and I coordinate with the officer who I have record of, and they start paying us back. So a lot of these people, as we said, they don't have a lot of money. So I have maybe about 20 people right now who are paying us back $30 a month. I have a couple of people who pay back a lot of times, hey, we owe you $3. If you give me $1,800 tomorrow, we'll call it even, because at least I can get the money back. Because honestly, many of the people who pay $30 a month, after 6 or 7 months, they kind of disappear. They stop paying. So I try to work with law enforcement on the best way to manage that. That's it. So we are going after people more and more. It's something that's it keeps a little bit of money in the bank that we use for matching funds for those grants that do require match. So it keeps projects active. If I have one more there, I was going to mention one more. You mentioned the beach earlier. There's a boat that came up on the beach in Melbourne Beach just about a week and a half ago. It was a pontoon boat. There was an accident, but something happened when it went dead. But in case anybody says, hey, there's a boat on the beach, it's right in the middle of a really busy turtle section where there's hundreds of nets, so that boat is gonna sit there until November. Because you can't bring the heavy equipment you need on the beach right now with all those nets to take the boat off. So that's, any question, that obviously I appreciate the support in this, it's something we're always supporting.
Dr. DeFreeze?
Matt, looking forward, the next 12 to 18 months, do you have enough money to do what you need to do? Based on kind of what you've got and what we might see, in the next few months moving forward.
So that depends on hurricane season, if you really want, we were close to, before last year's two storms that were near misses that hit us. We were down to about 12 boats sunk in the waterways, which actually was closer than we've been in a long time. And we were actively working on those vessels, so after the removals that I have scheduled now, and FWC has said they're gonna come in to remove about 12 other boats that are not on my list, they said they have their own funding for. So that could take out darn near anything, so again, it's hard to tell at this point, I hope. So it's ongoing, I anticipate needing more money probably in 12 months from now.
Just as a heads up, I think everybody here probably knows by now, the governor appropriated $100 million for the Indian River Lagoon Protection Program. Between now and August 29, multiple portals are open, for coastal resilience, but water quality is going to be a big focus. You may want to touch base with DEP and see if they would entertain using some of those dollars for some of this activity as a water quality improvement. So,
Okay,
and I can give you contacts.
that's a good idea. If you have something, I know you have my email. If you'd like.
Yeah,
you have that
I'll send you something.
Specific. Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, I'm always looking for grants if it's not obvious. A lot of times, right now, we happen to be flush. We have money for a project, but oftentimes I need to wait until 10 or 12 boats build up and then I can apply for money as opposed to going by boat by boat. So,
Yeah, okay, Matt, great presentation. I was wondering, for the boats that, where you have your derelict boats that are basically maybe abandoned, but then last year with the hurricane, there are a lot of boats that were just, circumstances because of that. Are they handled any differently? Like, is there insurance available from the owners that can help with the cleanup?
So this year, so there was about 64 boats that are down now, and the hurricanes actually sunk. So before the storm, we were down to about 13. So there was about 15 boats more or less that were taken out by insurance companies that the owner had insurance after the storm last year. Oftentimes, many of these boats, like I said, they're clunkers, so that people don't have insurance. What did happen this year, though, is in order to expedite the removal process, FWC came in they went to the owner of every sunken boat, all the owners they could track down, and they got those owners. They said, if you sign your boat over to us, we will pay for the removals and you will not be charged. You have to pay for the removal. And the funding that FWC has that I'm working with now is based on boats that they own, right? So really they're state-owned vessels. So that's what they did this year, is instead of trying to fight to get through the general vessel process, could be 45 to 90 days, if not longer, to try to get those boats cleared legally for me to remove them. Because someone could fight it, someone could say it's not my boat, say it's my grandpa's, he's deceased. So there's a lot of reasons people try to wiggle out of it. So instead this year, the state just said, give us the boat and we'll take it out, and they got a lot of people on the boat. So insurance comes in sometimes, but a lot of people, unless they have the right insurance, it doesn't go for the full extraction of the boat.
So there's a total of 64 right now, about
Yeah.
52 are on the hit list. Is it time or is it money with getting them out? Or
Well, the money's in place now, so it is time. The county has a long-term, we have a long-term contract. We have a contractor that's been on board, like we bid it every 3 years with the service contract. And he's actively working. It could take quite a while, particularly, it's a good example this afternoon. So if they were working, they would have to stop, get off their equipment because of the lightning and storm coming through. So a lot of times, particularly in the summer, they may be able to start a project in the morning, and then the next thing you know, they have to abandon everything and let it sit there. So that happened early. We started in March, and there was a couple weeks there where it was windy for almost 2 weeks straight, and they could do almost no removal. So They,
Because I see it on social media quite a bit and people complaining because that O'Galley is like, front and center. So if there's any boat there, and there's tons of comments. So an answer would be,
the county has a single contractor, to tell you the truth, it's law enforcement, the boat. I'm sitting on the money that you gave me and TD's, the, Board of Fish and Wildlife has been unable to give me authorization notices to remove about 5 boats sitting at the O'Galley Causeway. So I say, hey, give me the letters that I can remove them, but those boats were some of the hurricane boats that were signed over to FWC officially. So they're gonna, instead of giving me a contract again, but as they have done for the 2 rounds, they're giving me money, they're gonna hire their own contractor and someone to pick out those particular vessels. So.
what would make the most apparent?
I know the most, and that's actually, to tell you the truth, I get calls from the Center Maple Drive, the bridge over there.
Right.
regularly, and I happen to know my number and she gave me a call to clown for those over there. And I appreciate the Tallahassee, it's, you're a good call.
Anybody else have any questions? Very informative. Thank you very much.
Sure thing, thank you for the support.
Appreciate it. Next speaker we have is Kelsey Mack from City of Cocoa Beach. She's going to let us know what's going on with McNabb Park.
Hello, everybody. My name's Kelsey Mack. I'm the environmental specialist at the City of Cocoa Beach. And today I'm going to give you guys an update on our McNabb Park Living Shoreline project. So we'll go to the next slide. I always like to start and kind of let you guys know how close this is to you. This project is literally right in your backyard. So you are right there on that yellow star, and the project's actually located just about a mile away wherever the pink stars are. So if you ever want to check it out, see it with your own eyes, I'd be happy to take you out there. But as you can see, it's right in the middle of kind of the North Thousand Islands area. This is a conservation area that the city maintains a management plan for. So we're really excited to have this project here with your guys' support. So we'll go to the next slide. So specifically for this Living Shoreline project, we're seeking funding to seed the reef with live oysters. And we have a unique problem here in Cocoa Beach, and that there are not many reefs that are currently breeding. So they were here before, but they're not here now due to lots of water quality issues, all kinds of things going on. So the reason that that's important and why we needed to feed the reef is because of the oyster life cycle. So if there are no adults, they can't make any babies to then feed our restoration shoreline. So with your guys' assistance, we were able to actually seed the shoreline and bring oysters to this area, bring them back here. So we were able to seed, if you scoot forward 2, but yeah, those clicks. We were able to seed 2 different sizes of oysters here, and I'll explain what that means in a little bit, but this life cycle is super, super important in understanding how oysters repopulate their own reefs. Go to the next slide. So with your guys' assistance, we were able to pursue kind of 2 different methods of seeding the shoreline, or kind of test a couple of things out. So we went an aquaculture route and we went testing wild spat, 2 different routes. So I'll start with aquaculture and explain what that process means. So we contracted with a facility that is licensed to do aquaculture. They were down near Harbor Branch, down near Harbor Branch. We collected broodstock oysters, which are adult oysters. FWC gives us a certain limit that we're able to collect from the wild. So these were collected from all over the lagoon in Brevard County, from O'Galley Causeway down to Sebastian River. So we actually collected 150 was our limit. We took them down to the facility where they were conditioned. You can see a picture of those tanks. That's the algae that is fed to the oysters to condition them to get ready for spawning. And then the people at the facility check them constantly to see if they're ready to spawn under a microscope, looking for reproductive readiness. So we have some kind of ups and downs with that portion of the process. The animals weren't behaving as expected. If you're forcing animals to do behaviors that they're not ready to do, sometimes it doesn't work out for you. So while they were continuing to see if we could get our oysters ready through the aquaculture process, we attempted to catch wild spat. And so what that means is we caught it out in the lagoon. We hung these baskets under docks all over the place, from Melbourne Beach to Palm Bay, down near Malabar, a few different areas to try to catch spat. And we were actually successful with that. And so we caught enough that we were able to stop doing the aquaculture processes in an effort to move the project along more quickly and to save money. The Wildcat that worked for us, but there's a couple of caveats to it. We just got super lucky with the timing. So if you remember that oyster life cycles, they're not constantly spawning at the very specific times of year. So we got really lucky with being able to catch the number of spat that we did, and then we were able to relocate those to McNabb Park. You can go to the next slide. So here's what the project actually looks like today, and we've had some really nice water clarity conditions out there. So I was able to get a couple really good photos. We have two different reef module types on our living shoreline. We have the oyster prisms, which are the triangle shaped ones, and then we have oyster gabions, which are the metal boxes. You can see them in the top photo on the top right of the slide there. And on the left-hand side of the screen, those are our oyster prisms. We basically put those in the water in 3 different rows, and there's kind of a valley in between. We filled those with those live oysters to establish the reef area there. And then we also have gabions located behind the prisms right here. And then there's some across the way near more of a natural mangrove shoreline. So really cool to see them out there on the shoreline. We can go on to the next. But I wanted to bring you guys some actual numbers because it's easy to look at everything and say those look like oysters, but let's talk about how many we actually have. So we have a couple of different sizes of oysters out there. As I mentioned, we have gardened oysters, which are adult oysters. These are at least 3 years old. So they were caught wild, grown for about 2 years out there, and then they were moved to McNabb Park and they sat for another year to acclimate. So now they're about 3 years old. So on the graph, you can see the distribution of sizes of oysters we have out there. Over 40 millimeters is considered a breeding size. So we have about 64% of the adult oysters that we put out there are large enough to breed. That's really great that they can kind of start going through that natural cycle and repopulating our reef year after year after spawning cycle. We also deployed spat on shell, which are the little tiny baby oysters that have just settled on a shell. And you can see a few of them in this photo here. They're really small. You can kind of see them there. But we deployed about 24,000 of those so far, and 12,000 more are going in next week. So we're going to have quite a large number of oysters out here on this project site. With your guys' help, we were able to do that. So we are very excited. And then let's go on to the next. And I just wanted to share some of our monitoring data. So these were deployed in April. You can see that in the blue line. Those are the distributions and sizes of the adults. And then the orange line is in May. So we're still seeing a similar distribution in size. There's still a lot of them out there. So they seem to be acclimating well. They seem to be adjusting to the shock of being moved to a different area pretty well. And then let's go on to the next. This is showing the baby oysters, which is the spat on shell. And these ones, we expected to experience a little bit more shock because they're a lot smaller, being moved from an area like Palm Bay or Melbourne Beach where the salinity is different. Up here to the Banana River, those guys were probably like, whoa, what is going on? But we did see some pretty good success here after, it's just 1 month. So we're going to continue monitoring. I wanted to point out, if you look at the blue line, which is April, you'll notice that the size class 0 to 10 millimeters, that is higher than it was at 1 month, but we see the 11 to 20 millimeters move up in May. So that indicates that the baby oysters are actually growing. So they moved up a size class, or some of them moved up to the next size class, which is really great to see. That's what we're out here trying to do. That's what we want. And we'll go on to the next. And then we have educational kiosks underway that'll be put out at the park to discuss everything that I just kind of told you about the oyster project, how we brought them here, and what the benefits of those oyster communities are. And we'll also have signage to describe some of the oyster, the mangrove and spartina grass plantings that we did. And I also wanted to mention our Save Our Indian River Lagoon partners. They did a video for our project. So if you have not seen it, definitely go check that out. And then we had so many volunteers and funding partners that helped us out with this project. So I just want to say thank you to them and just point out we had 198 volunteers who contributed over 495 volunteer hours to build oyster habitats for this project. So we got the community involved. Everybody really had a hand in this. And we couldn't have done it without them and without your guys' support. So thank you. And with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
Freeze.
What's next for you guys out there? It's like we could be doing this for a long time. So what's the next phase? Do you have that kind of in mind?
So where we're at right now is we're wrapping up that deployment next week. We have UCF on board, who's gonna monitor the project for 2 years, so we're only really a month into the monitoring. We're trying to see if this is even, are they gonna be happy here? Because we don't want to keep bringing oysters here and, sending them basically to their demise. So we're gonna look at the monitoring data and see what that tells us. And then go from there. I mean, ideally, we could. The main goal here is to establish a breeding population so that we don't have to go through all of this every single time we want to do restoration here in the city. So if this is successful and it becomes a healthy breeding population, perhaps, nearby, we could do another restoration project and continue expanding throughout the Thousand Islands area.
Are there any stormwater outfalls near where your project is located? Are you getting pulses of fresh water, or are they in pretty stable habitat?
So that's a really great question. So the salinity here tends to hover around 17, which is on like the low end for what oysters like to see. There is a stormwater outfall very close, but we actually did a low impact development project on the road next to this park beforehand. So no direct stormwater is coming in right there next to this site. It's going down into pervious pavers and R tanks, and it goes through a layer of BAM, sits in a swale. And after it sits in the swale and the swale overflows, then it goes out into the lagoon. So, and there will be more swales and those types of areas going in around this. So there's some, but not as much as there would have been had the LND project not been done beforehand.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Sounds like you love oysters, and so do I. But on the other, yeah. So
You see Matt out there.
that's right. Thank you very much, Ms. Mack. Okay. I think we're gonna have another person from the Natural Resource Department, Matt Bottalato. They talk to us about the lagoon grant for the manatee signage.
Matt's on remotely,
Okay.
and Becky's gonna be,
I'm gonna be Matt for today.
it hasn't worked over the.
Right, so I'm Becky Clarkson. I'm a contract employee with the Brevard Natural Resources Department. So, and Matt is on the line over here in case I need any help talking about this project. So this is the Manatee Field Guide Outdoor Signage and Distribution Project. This is a project that was funded with a previous cycle of CDC funding, and with that previous cycle, we were able to create a brochure, a poster, and some conceptual signage. So this project allowed us to continue that and increase the distribution of these projects around the county, as well as some environmental signage that is being installed around. So this is a brochure that you're getting handed out right now. It's a 4x9 rat card that has a fold out map on the inside with manatee viewing locations around the county. The goal with this piece was to encourage lagoon tourism around the area and encourage people, both residents and tourists, to explore the county through various places where they can see manatees. One of the questions that we found in talking to different tour operators and visitor centers around the county was the most commonly asked question was, where can I see manatees? So this project really helped us to start to address that question and get that information around the county through both brochure rat cards that will go out in visible areas for tourists, as well as signage for residents that are already recreating on the lagoon. So this brochure also has 3 different QR codes in it. One of them, well, all of them link to a collection of story maps. So we've updated and enhanced the manatee story map and linked it with additional recreation story maps. So basically, there's a whole system that you can scan the QR code to see that links into a hub of content about how to recreate responsibly around the lagoon. And it's geared for both residents and tourists to help expand lagoon recreation and tourism. We are contracted with FPIS to distribute this brochure in over 150 locations around the county, including the Sanford Airport. I think Sanford alone has 3 million impressions annually, so it'll be a lot of different audiences that will be able to put this manatee content in front of. Thank you. And then this is a screen cap of the story map geared around manatees with a vignette of the story map collection on the left. And so the manatee content kind of lives now in this greater recreation ecosystem that we've built. And through these digital applications, we're able to directly link people up with the content that they're looking for, either through this brochure or through signage around the lagoon, and then give them access to information about tours, how to reach different points of recreation around the county. And it allows us to link back to the visit Space Coast site to kind of provide a full rounded experience for how to recreate on the lagoon. Presentation. So we brought a sample of one of the pieces of signage that we're putting up around the lagoon. So we've been speaking with cities to kind of get these at that various waterfront ports around the county so that we have a wide coverage area. So that when people are out there looking at manatees, in addition to the signage that is already there, which usually is either state related or through the Manatee Club, this will be an additional source of information to augment what's already there about manatees. A lot of questions.
Ms. Thompson?
I want to comment that, you know, you've come a long way. This is spectacular compared to the first version of it. It's beautiful. We'd like to have them out at the Merritt Island Wildlife Refuge Visitor Center, but we'd have to okay it with Fish and Wildlife first. But is there a possibility we could get it out at the visitor? Because we're getting tons of people that are there, and the first thing they want to know, where can we see them? Obviously, we have #1 spot on the map, but you know, that could drive people, you know, to different parts of the county if they had this handed out to them. But
Definitely.
we'll check.
We're printing 35,000 brochures, so we should have a surplus to be able to distribute to anybody that wants them around the county.
I'd love to have them in my restaurant, but you'd have to print 70,000 more.
And on that note, where are they distributed? Would you-
You know, I don't know if you can go backwards. This is a very small slide, but this is the actual locations of where they are. But there's an I-95 route, and then like it's kind of like a US 1 corridor is I think what they call it. But it's mainly, it's the managed hotel racks that we're implementing the distribution system in. So it's a lot of hotels and restaurants and different visitor centers along the route. I think actually our county tourism office might be on there as one of the potential locations. It's what we found in our experience with our last round was that handing them out manually to various locations around the county we were able to do it, but it was a lot of legwork and we weren't able to really track as easily like how quickly things were disappearing. We can track by the QR code scans, which allows us to see like which locations our people are most interested in the information. But with the distribution network, we're able to get that additional layer of data that tells us like what places have a faster return rate. So this will kind of help us identify that, which is helpful and for knowing what areas are more interested in, what areas may be more actually targeting for work around the county.
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
So does FDIS control your whole brochure inventory, or do you guys have some at the Office of Tourism in case we can get it put out at the wildlife?
We have the majority of the inventory, but we'll reserve some inventory out
Okay.
there.
Okay,
Please, in our outreach efforts as well,
right.
when we get requests like the refuge.
It's first class. It's really nice. I like it. Something, yeah.
I know social media a lot, and I noticed this every week at least, there's multiple people on all from next door on Facebook asking about where to see manatees, and so I'm always out there different.
I can see these in Airbnbs, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, thanks again.
Thank you.
Great presentation. Okay, next we have Brandon Smith, also with the Natural Resource Department, talking about the field guide.
Yeah, so kind of building off of this, we did the recreation guide, you mentioned it briefly in the previous presentation, so there's that guide. And it's following sort of a similar format, so.
Yeah, so this is a new one that we haven't been able to show the committee before. So this is an expansion of that initial manatee field guide idea that picked up a much broader term of lagoon recreation. So we chose 8 different lagoon recreation categories, and those choices are based off of previous CDC studies, CDC funded studies about different, as well as tourism market studies about what types of recreation are more popular on the lagoon and what types are more interested, what types of recreation people are more interested in returning to engage in. And so this piece goes into much more detail. We use the nature heritage information from One Lagoon research, as well as city, county, and state parks to come up with over 150 locations around the lagoon that recreation available for the public with public parking and free access to that recreation. So it really helps put into visual the scope of recreation that's available on the lagoon for both residents and tourists. And again, following up with research done with the tourist centers around the area, after what, where can I see Yana to use the next most popular question related to how can I launch my kayak or my boat, or, you know, where can I see other types of wildlife around the lagoon, or where can I take my family for a nice walk? And so this really is intended to help address those questions, both for residents and visitors. And like the manatee guide, it is has a disperser format, as well as signage that's being installed at points around the lagoon. Here's the story map. So we built 10 story maps with the manatee. We originally had the first one, and we enveloped all these together. So we now have like a recreation overview story map that goes into detail about all the different types of recreation around the lagoon. And then visitors are able to drill down into different types of recreation like boating or kayak and paddling, and look at specific maps just for access for those particular types of recreation. And again, because we've got this wonderful digital format out there, it allows us to link back to Visit Space Coast for all sorts of blog information and additional content about tours or rentals, and enabling further recreation and tourism around the lagoon. So similar solution to the distribution, we're using FCIS to distribute in the same rack card now as we are with the manatee. So these brochures look at side by side in rack cards, and then kind of are intended to marry up together. So for people will take both of them. Again, there's QR codes throughout it so that they're able to, dive directly into the recreation of their choice and learn more about it and have immediate access and directions to the places where we can find that recreation around the world. And so this again is a quick screen cap of the story maps. They're extensive. They have a lot of photography in them. And so the idea was to kind of provide, again, both in a map format and well as a visual storytelling format, the different types of ways that people can recreate around. And I did mention this before, but with both of these projects, there's pretty extensive analytics involved with them. So all of these are routed through the County Lagoon Loyal outreach site for different types of analytics tracking and analysis. So we're able to look at the QR code scans as well as the website traffic on these pages to determine how people are using the information, where they're coming from, what type of devices they're on, where they're accessing the content around the lagoon. So it provides us with a lot of helpful outreach information for understanding and knowing where people are looking for this information, which helps with event planning.
These are stunning.
Yeah.
Absolutely stunning. And I think back almost 30 years ago in the early late 1990s and early 2000s, when we were trying to develop this kind of stuff for state post office tourism. I wrote extensively so many descriptions and stuff. And to sit here and marvel at this now and think back to, those decades ago when we first started on this journey, this is just unbelievable. So beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, there's so much, I mean, the space coast birding efforts out there are amazing, looking at. One of the fun things about these projects is getting to do the research on them and for places around the lagoon and getting to do photography at them. And, I was just impressed personally with the amount of content that is out there in different places and being able to bring it all together in a format like this, I think it's really valuable because when you really go looking for it, you can find it, but it's hard. This Space Coast does an amazing job of bringing all of that together for it, but I think that putting this around the lagoon at different places brings it both to a resident and tourist audience and kind of marries it to people where they're at. And so it kind of allows us to reach the audience at the time when they're actually thinking about recreation. So it enables them to kind of have that top of mind. And hopefully will help them expand their understanding of how they can do that. And obviously in all of these pieces, there's a component of stewardship. So a lot of that lives in the online content just because we have such limited real estate with the content pieces. So there is extensive information for manatees as well as other types of living recreation about weddings. There's obviously information for residents and tourists. So we have some ways to kind of separate that, but also put it out there for both audiences. And both of these pieces link to a pledge component, which is new. It's just for this project, for both the NT and the recreation guide. And it encourages both residents and tourists to take a pledge to help protect the lagoon. And it goes through a series of activities they can check off. And then for taking that pledge, they are received incentives like in forward work from a local business. And then a month later, after they take that pledge, they receive an automated follow-up email that asks them for tourists, it's a different set of questions, asking how their visit was the Space Coast and what they intend to do on their next visit related to recreation on the lagoon. And then for residents, a little bit more extensive as far as the different types of actions that they can take to the lagoon friendly. All of that content enables us to come up with estimated calculations of the nutrient reduction benefit for the lagoon. So those are some new analytics components that go into this, but it allows us at the end of the day to have these calculations for the amount of impact something like a brochure and how it can have a direct impact for.
Are you bringing them to the COC meeting on Friday to pass around?
We'll have some area.
Yeah.
You showed your distribution through Park County. Are you looking to expand maybe into Orange County? Where you got a lot of the tourists?
So what we found is that the route for distribution in Orange County, there's a lot more distribution vendors, but the rates are a lot higher there just because there's a little bit more. And so for this project, the budget wasn't written to enable us to reach Orange County directly. We've done. Yeah, so I think that with this information, we're starting with Sanford to see how that goes, to see how we can go back and forth. In the past, we've tried, manually delivering things out of the county to see how they are received, and we got them scanned, but it's as Peter, getting into Orange County is a little bit more of there's more of a financial consideration there. So definitely, I think that would be something where if it is well received here and we end up seeing like a high scan rate and a high reception rate, it's not so for this particular cycle, but it's certainly something that we'll be able to collect the data with analyze that and determine what we would imagine that the church would be.
with the Space Coast Birding and Wildlife Festival coming back in January, this would be a great handout to the registrant. See what to do. So I hope you work with Space Coast Audubon on that.
Obviously research their content and there's links over to the Great Florida Birding and Wildlife Trail throughout this, but, yeah, I think we can definitely. And we're not having some very audience and great idea. Yeah.
So at the commission, the FWC commission meeting, tomorrow and Thursday, one of the staff reports is on the Great Florida Birding and Wildlife Trail, and, it was very positive. I looked through the agenda, and I wrote something that, somebody's gonna read for me since I can't go to the meeting. So I gotta go to Miwok, but, yeah, I know. You know, you can only be in one place at one time. Yeah, so I think that, overall, the Great Florida Birding and Wildlife Trail is being looked at, as a major positive thing for the state of Florida, so. This just, I can't tell you how happy this makes me. I want to be.
And now you can.
This is a mock-up of the signs that'll be going up for this. We're gonna pair them up where we can with the manatee signs. So we're gonna try to do double-sided signs where we are able to reduce the cost.
So will they be kiosks, Brandon?
Yeah, be standing kiosk or cantilever,
Mhm.
Depending on the area. But we'll see what the needs are of each park.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And I think we have one more speaker from the Natural Resources Department, Carolina Alvarez.
Hello, everybody, I'm Charlene Alvarez, with the Recommending of the Resources. I'll have beautiful facilities. I'm just gonna bring you up today with our Titusville Crossway project. I think the majority of you are familiar with the location and what we have been through. You guys have funded this project since the feasibility study. So I think this is the 4th year. So the most current funding is for construction only. The previous funding that was extended until October of this year includes the 60% design plan, then the 90%, and with that, barring funding and permits. These are some pictures taken at the shoreline, so you have an idea of the erosion that happens there, and this project is part of it is to prevent that. So here's a long list of the permitting process. So starting with meetings with the agencies, pre-meetings, to discuss the project, to see how to approach it in order to obtain the project. And as you can see, last time we received something and we responded was June of this year with the promise that we will get a permit, but we still haven't heard. Sorry, that was a lot of information. It wasn't meant for you to read it, but just to see that there's a lot of work behind it. This is a video, and the video is I know already there, but. No. Okay, sorry, maybe the way that I sent it to you didn't work. I apologize. It was to show you how the waves actually attenuate the wave, so it goes through it. And you can see on the other side, more or less, you can see on the other side how there's more clear crystalline water than on the port side. So, and here's several projects that have been permitted and installed in other areas of Florida. Most recently, the Skyway, Tampa Skyway, they are putting some there. So right now, I don't think they have been installed. You can see them if you drive towards and see. And I think, Lorly, you have the pleasure of visiting E.G. Simmons Park on the top
With
left.
you,
How many years ago was that?
3 or 4 at least.
Yeah.
So, next. In order to be able to, complete the project, we totally have to fund this project with grants. Because our program only uses stormwater money for stormwater projects, and because this is inside the river, it's not considered stormwater. So we can't use any of our utility funding to fund the project, even though I put a lot of hours on it. So, here's, all the applications that we have submitted, probably since the second year, which is when we, through the feasibility study, determined that this will be a good solution for the erosion of the shoreline. And, most recently, well, you guys have given us, thank you so much, total, for construct, well, without counting the facility, 500,000. With the facility, it's almost about another 100. And, right now, because phase 2C of the current funding is the construction, without a permit, we can't construct the project. We don't know that we're gonna be able to utilize all of that current money. Right now, that will be, there's an agenda item for the board to allow us to bid the project before we have a permit and a grant contract from, DEP. However, I don't know whether that will be allowed. That goes to the board on the 25th. We're trying to move forward to try to spend the money, prior to the deadline, but it's getting to be too difficult. So I don't know that we will be able to spend all the money from the fiscal year 21-22.
Is that going to the TDC board or the board of
No,
county
the county,
commissioners?
yeah, the board of county commissioners.
You want me to show up?
Sure, if you want to. I
just
think
need
it's
to
gonna
be
go
briefed a
consent
little bit
unless
before.
they decide not to look at it through consent. We're actually asking for,
Okay,
to allow us to bid, advertise, award contract, sign the grant contract from the DEP, which they have given us a total of 3.9 million. So, we're very proud that we have obtained all of the funding that we need to construct the project. Hopefully, if prices don't continue to escalate, and if we get a permit soon. So that's, where we're at with the grants. If we don't have the contract, but hopefully we'll get it soon. It has been awarded and 2 different fundings from the resiliency program. Here's just a little, summary of the construction timeline. We're hoping that we can contract by October. And well, October to December. Actually, we're trying to do it sooner, but you know, if it doesn't get approved and we don't get a permit, it will end up being the last quarter of the year, calendar year, where we can actually do the contracting. And then if that's what happens, we'll start construction in January through May for the wave attenuation unit. And then June through September, it will be the other parts of the project. So this project has shoreline stabilization, which includes planting and a planting plan that you've asked for. I don't have it and I didn't put it there. But obviously for permitting, we needed to supply that. It also has seagrass planting and monitoring for 2 years and clam seeding. Sorry. So then the monitoring will be actually, I'm sorry, for 3 years. And then monitoring reports, which will have to be submitted to the granting agencies. Of course, your money only lasts until 24, and by the time that we're there, we'll definitely spend that because the project is in the millions of dollars. So that's just sort of like a estimate of quantities and costs for the project. That's the FYI, you can look at the bottom line. And here's what the array will look like from a plan view in the river. So it's about 2,500 linear feet. The watts range in height from 5 to 8 feet. And they're different, there's like 20 feet between each one of them. So there could be access for boating. There's gonna be many signs, so the boaters will be able to see it. They stick out of the water. The elevation where the water being installed is -4, the shoreline being at 0. So, and there is a hole in between them, like a dipping area, so they're a little higher. Next. And that's again, the wave attenuation devices, that's how they would look like more or less if the towers are not as curved. And hopefully, when we have a project completed, it will look like this. Not quite, but you get the picture. Any questions? Okay.
Anybody have any comments or questions? Is there a estimated time of completion? I think I missed that. It's ongoing. The final.
Well, if we, yeah, thank you. Yeah, on the slide, it tells you when we estimate the completion, if we can follow that schedule. Of course, that all depends on the permitting.
So where was the holdup on permitting? Is it just the general process or was it the use of WADs? I mean, was there a point where you kind of had to push through, you know, the DEP and FWC process? Or was it just general?
We'll see doctors doing the permitting,
Mhm.
the Corps is on board, FWC is on board. It's mostly St. John. They keep asking for more and more assurances that the project is gonna work, that it's not gonna deteriorate the water quality. How are we preventing the sand from getting, you know, in the lagoon? And, you know, we have a lot of areas that have nothing protecting the shoreline. And so this is what this is gonna look like. It's gonna be like any other shoreline, but like, I don't know if it's, new people that have come on board or they're not looking at it, they're not looking at it as a complete project, they're looking at it as little pieces. But we just have been, if they ask for additional modeling that we have to do, so that delayed a little bit of process, so we actually had to put it on hold for a little bit, but we were waiting for that. And the results, and then submitting that. So during that process, we kind of hold the design because we want to make sure that we were going to be able to move forward, but we continue asking for granting. So, I don't know, Chuck Jacoby with St. John is kind of also leading the project. They're actually giving us $800,000 match for their resiliency grant. And, I happened to see Tom Kirk in one of the, at the FSA conference, and I kind of say, hey, you think we're gonna get a permit soon? So he actually talked to Charles, and I don't know if that's going to help a little bit, but I'm hoping.
Okay, I've got one follow-up. What species of seagrass you're looking at? Haliduli there?
So
You know?
Yeah, me, Holly Dooley,
Okay.
that's what it was there. Well,
Yeah,
not quite a lot, but
been there
more.
historically.
Yeah, I think there's currently in the whole area like less than an acre. And that we plan to put in like 4 acres.
Mhm.
So of course, not that they're all gonna survive, but I'm hoping. Sorry?
So we got in the same kind of log jam with the permitting for the new visitor center out of the wildlife refuge. And it just went on and on and on. And so I talked to Thad Altman, and Thad said, oh, well, I'm meeting with St. John's, you know, folks next week up in Tallahassee during the legislature. And that was like on Tuesday, and by Friday we had a permit. So there is a young man named Adam Lovejoy that works for St. John's River Water Management District, and I talked to him last week at the presentation that St. John's did. But apparently he is the guy that can get permits moving. So you could say that, you know, Lorley and Dwayne told you to get in touch with them, you know, and see if he can help on that permitting.
Okay.
Really nice guy, Adam Lovejoy.
Don't forget the whole thing.
There you go.
Good stuff. Great.
Thank you.
Anything else? Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, with that, is there any public comments or?
Mr. Chair, I have one item, if I might. Sorry, I didn't have it on the agenda, but I wanted to get the committee's input on a topic that's come up recently. as a reminder, we have a contract with Keep of Our Beautiful to clean the causeways in the county. The contract is $67,000, so that may be a touch less than that, but that's the rounded up number. And it's been going on for, it was a 3-year contract with a 2-year renewal. It was originally granted as part of an IRL grant. However, we then brought it, I think in year 2, back to the committee to say, hey, could we just make it a recurring contract rather than making them reapply every year? And the answer came back yes. So we did do that and we implemented that. So we've got that in place. That goes for another year through 2024. Then last year, they applied for an additional grant to try to supplement, particularly State Road 528, which has gotten since COVID very, very active. A lot of people are using that, both the east and west side of the causeway for recreation. And it's not a public park. It's actually FDOT controlled, but people use it. And of course, there's, as a result, a lot of traffic. So they applied last year. They got a $40,000 grant from this committee, but it was only a 1 year. So because we aren't having IRL grants this year, the question came up, well, how are we going to handle State Road 528 as we go into the next fiscal year? I think that's a really good question. And of course, right after July 4th weekend, what happens, but Fox News covers all the trash that's been left behind by all our little friends from Orange County and everywhere else that use not to blame Orange County, but I know it's not for Bard County people because they're cool. So, but there was a lot of trash and got kind of a negative story. So I've reached out to the port to see if they might have an interest in partnering, but what I wanted to ask this committee is what would their thoughts be on renewing that contract for the $40,000 to $50,000 range, no more than $50,000. And then the question would be, what funds do we use? Of course, we're obviously concerned about what are we going to have to spend with all the beach renourishment projects, but in the scheme of things, 50,000, we probably could find those funds within the general beach fund. There was no money that was approved by the board to be allocated for any IRL grant activity. So I'd have to bring this to the TDC and to the board, which I'm not necessarily looking forward to, but I think it's an important issue for us to at least weigh in on and see what your thoughts are.
Well, I'd like to open up some discussion on this.
Was KBB gonna have to apply for another $40,000 lagoon grant this year?
They would have, yeah, they would have come back for another grant. And by the way, the first contract I mentioned, that allows them to clean all the causeways about 1 day a week, right? So each causeway gets a day. The 40,000 allowed an additional 3 days a week for a staffer. So it gave 3 supplemental days, which is really, frankly, it worked pretty well. Obviously, the person got a little behind on July 4th weekend. That was, that was a peak moment, but they actually did a full volunteer cleanup on Saturday. So I think everything's good right now. I just sent a note to Tammy to look at that. By the way, Brian Bobbitt has left KBB and it's now Tammy Lizon is the current, acting director. But yes, they would have come back this year for another grant.
So are you looking for us to do?
I mean, I'd love to get feedback on, do you think it's worthwhile to pursue with the TDC and the board to have that, see if they would be willing to fund it? And, when I brought the IRL grants to the board, there was, there was a lot of feelings on both sides as to whether we should move forward with that or not. But at the end of the day, the board decided to take no action. So I don't know if they would even agree to funding this, but I'm willing to try if this committee thinks it's worth the effort.
Would the 40,000 come out of our grant next year and make it like
I mean,
960,000?
I mean, that's an option, you know, that's certainly an option to bring to them. That might be a sort of a bone, if you will, to throw.
Well, I wouldn't want to do that, you know, because they're not competing with everybody else fairly to compete for money.
True.
So it doesn't, but, you know, that might be an option, but that's.
And it has to come out of the beach fund?
I mean, that's really the only fund legally from a, you know, state and county ordinance perspective that would allow payment for something like this. So, yeah.
Does the rest of their contract for cleaning up Cocoa Beach and the other beaches, does that come out of the beach fund too, or is that coming out of?
Yeah, so the third contract that we have with, is actually with the city of Cocoa Beach. That's also a multi-year, and they subcontract KBB for that, and that's a much bigger number that I don't have off the top of my head. It's north of $100,000. It's probably more than that. But yeah, that does come out of the beach fund as well. So same source of fund, but that was not because it was beach cleanup and not causeway cleanup. It was not treated as an IRL grant, so they didn't come out of the grant funds.
Right.
That came out of separate beach funds, general beach, what I would call general beach funds, which is really where everything comes out of when you think about all the beach nourishment, turtle monitoring, sea oak planting, anything that's done on the beaches comes from the general beach fund, except for the $1 million.
Could the $40,000 just kind of be slid into the rest of the beach cleanup type stuff that's coming out in the main fund? Could that be done by the TDC on a recommendation from this committee?
It would still probably end up having to go to the board because it would be an augmentation of an existing contract. Plus the contract is with the city of Cocoa Beach. And the city of Cocoa Beach doesn't control 528, so it wouldn't be the right authority. So yeah, we'd have to do a separate contract, most likely for the 40.
So all of the other causeway cleanups that KBB is doing, are they coming out of the IRL grant also?
Yes, that's where those funds come from, is from the $1 million IRL grant
Okay.
fund. So under, you know, prior years, it was a multi-year contract that was approved by the committee to come out of the IRL grant fund.
Okay, so
Yes.
this 40,000 is the only thing that wasn't approved as a multi-year.
That's right, that's right.
So every year, the KBB causeway cleanups are gonna come out of our $1 million, right?
Yes.
But they don't have to apply for a grant every year, it's just.
Not on the general causeway cleanup, but on this, for whatever reason, for this 40,000, we didn't approach it the same way. So,
Well,
you know, we certainly could going forward, we could ask that
Yeah.
question, yeah.
it's different timing. We'd already approved
Right.
the extended contract.
Right.
And then they came back and said,
We need a little
we need
more.
more money to clean up around, mostly around the Banana River.
Yeah. And it was really, you know, I would say it was a really much an outcome of COVID, because previously they were handling 528 okay. But then over COVID, everybody decided that was the place to, you know, party.
It might have gotten worse now. They
Yeah.
put up the chain link fence on the Titusville Causeway.
Right.
Because that drove the jet skiers down to 528.
Well, that could be. Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I was gonna say too, if we did use 40,000 from next year's budget, then would that, you know, just push the problem down the road, because then they couldn't apply for a grant that'd be over the, you know, the limit for 50,000. Not sure how that would work, but it sounds like there's a need for it,
Yeah.
and, you know. That publicity is hard to overcome, regain that.
Yeah, I mean, normally I wouldn't be looking for another excuse to stand in front of the board and ask for an
Yeah.
allocation like this. But I'd rather do that than stand in front of Fox and explain. So,
Yeah.
So are we making this a motion?
I mean, the committee certainly, welcome an emotion or welcome a general consensus. I mean, either way, I can take it to the TDC next week. We have a meeting on Wednesday, so.
General consensus is probably better, right? I mean, there's nothing we can really ask for.
Right.
So does somebody have a motion?
Well, I would like to not see the 40,000 come out of our next grant cycle whenever that happens. I'd rather. I mean, if we're gonna stick our necks out, or if we're gonna stick Peter's neck out. I'd rather see that 40 grand moved into the regular beach fund so that we can keep our $1 million clean and then have it to start with next year. And not start out with 960,000 and then have them come back and want another
Right,
40,000
which
out
they
of
will.
960.
Yeah.
And there's no guarantee we're gonna get the money next year depending on the hurricane season. So, you know,
Yeah.
kind of.
And that's where I was headed. It's really hard to obligate dollars, both in a
But you have no
policy
idea.
standpoint and a financial standpoint on a grant program.
But we don't know if it's
We
gonna-
haven't identified, nor
Yeah.
has TDC
Right,
authorized.
right.
So kind of thinking that
It'd just be a
you should
one-time
probably
ask.
bring this, to the TDC board, say this is where we're at.
Yeah,
Give us some guidance,
right.
because I don't know what the solution to this is, but there may be a consensus within, the board that this needs to be done.
Yeah,
It's frustrating, and I think for all of us, but those of us who are on the lagoon a lot, to see this kind of just
Garbage.
bad attitude,
yeah,
with
Yeah.
litter. I mean, it's the easiest pollution source to stop
right.
with good behavior. It doesn't cost a dime. And the fact that this is getting worse,
Yeah.
just is
Well, and
drives me crazy.
And the, unfortunately, I mean, poor reporting or bad journalism or whatever, but the focus became Brevard County's problem, not pointing at the people to say, hey,
Yeah.
pack it up, ship it out, dump it in your own garbage. Don't leave it here for us,
There's dumpsters all over the car.
Well, there are, but that was another question that I talked to KBB about is, should we put more dumpsters out? But dumpsters attract, unfortunately, the wrong kind of garbage because construction debris gets
Mhm.
dumped there very often. So it's almost like you could create more of a problem. So we're kind of evaluating, maybe we put a couple out, don't put as many,
Need a plan.
need a plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not our authority because it is FDOT. Sometimes, if it's illegal dumping and illegal leaving of garbage, that's that's a sheriff. So they, but they don't really patrol those areas as much. The port gets involved because obviously it means, that's the main path to the port and they want that, they have a vested interest in it looking good. So, there's just a lot of authorities involved and we don't really have control over those areas, other than the,
Maybe that's the
Pay to
first step,
clean up.
though, it's figuring out who would be, I know the town of Isle Morada had the same issue. And state had the road and then
right,
they gave it to the town of Isle Morada and they eventually started patrolling it.
Right.
Signs that you can park here, and they had really bad trash. Bad, every weekend. So I don't think we're at that point yet,
No.
but we wouldn't want to get to that point because it builds.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any comments on that? Yes,
I
sir.
just have an announcement. I mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to mention it again. We're in a historic moment of funding for the Indian River Lagoon. And multiple portals are now open at the FDEP website. One is for coastal resilience. There's another for kind of general water quality, which will be statewide, and another for Indian River Lagoon water quality per se. Those portals will only be open till August 29th, 28th, maybe. I forget what day it is, but the end of August. And then DEP is going to be, making decisions about funding projects. And so anybody who's looking for projects, project funding needs to take a look at that. And then come, let's see, the end of September, early October, the National Estuary Program will be releasing 4 new RFPs. We'll decide the details in our August meeting, second week, but there'll be a RFP for water quality, a second for habitat restoration, a third for community engagement in restoration, a fourth for science and innovation, a little short of $1 million total, with a little longer cycle to prepare those proposals. But anybody who's hunting for money right now, between the Infrastructure Investment Act at the federal level, you know, the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, there is more money on the street for coastal, ocean, and marine than I've seen in my entire life. And I don't think we're going to see this again. So now's the time to ask. So one other announcement. Every year, we, the National Estuary Program, provide about $40,000 in a line item budget to give our stakeholders free access to professional proposal writers, basically grant writers. I don't think we've spent $1 of this year's line item. And in fact, we've never spent that line item out completely on any given year. You send us a half a page justification of what you want to do and how it relates to our comprehensive conservation plan. We basically give it an okay and then call one of our 3 professional grant writers already under contract, you know, put the client and the contractor together, and the client doesn't have to spend $1. We cover everything. We cover the invoicing. The only thing that we ask is that if you're coming to us for that, you need to know where the grant is. So we're not going to hunt for grants for people. But we've had tremendous success, including with Brevard County, most recently with the Stan Mayfield waterfront grant. I think we spent $4,000 or $5,000 and they got what was it, $1.2 million or something? I forget, but we've had really good success. So by all means, if you're hunting for money and need grant support, call us.
So I had a question about the 100 million. Is any of the 100 million allocated already, or is it all literally up for allocation through this grant process?
I wish I could answer that question. So,
And does it have to be spent on the Indian River or?
yeah,
is
so,
Yeah.
so the governor's, it's called Executive Order 2306, specified 100 million a year, every year for 4 years.
Okay.
For Indian River Lagoon, but when you go through some of the other legislative mandates for the lagoon, you know, there was a mandate for monitoring and research that's going through DEP. So I'm not exactly sure, you know, how the allocations are going to go.
But it all flows through DEP. 100%
Right now, unless they make a decision to partition some of that to Water Management District, which could happen, that's happened in the past. All of this will go through DEP. And I'm not sure what happens or how the process is going to work. But I'll have a better handle probably in a week or so. But it is a historic moment. We've never seen that level of funding. And that doesn't include the additional legislative budget request proposals that went through the budget. There was another more than 33 million in specific projects for the Indian River Lagoon, not just in Brevard, but Brevard was by far, you know, the big winner in the budget with legislative budget requests. Thanks very much to our, you know, state delegation, but particularly Senator Debbie Mayfield was really working hard to make sure those projects stayed in the budget. So yeah, it was. And if anybody just wants a summary of it, rather than going through the 1,000 pages of budget, call me and or email me and I can send you just a summary of the Indian River Lagoon related stuff.
I mean, we can put a story in our newsletter for the next few weeks if you want on the 100 million to let people know about it. 'Cause I don't know. I don't think like, that's the first I had heard that it was gonna be allocated that way. I thought the way it was described in the media, it was already allocated, and so it was just gonna,
Yeah, these are not allocated
Yeah.
dollars, other than the LBRs, which were specific project allocations. That 100 million, I think most of it's gonna be in the DEP
well,
portal.
we're happy to help promote
Yeah,
it.
like
so.
DEP, we want to get the word out because it's a short timeline between now and the end of August.
Exactly.
I'll send you some information, and what I'll do is I'll work through DEP on the language and then get it to you.
Okay, perfect.
No, that's great, thanks.
Good point. Thank you very much for bringing that to everybody's attention. Hopefully it gets to some good ears, right? Do we have any public opinion or public comments? No? Does anybody else have?
I was gonna say, did y'all determine on the KBB thing?
Yeah, I think we were just gonna try to get a plan together. It was,
Yeah, I mean, my
I'm gonna
takeaway is,
recuse from it because I'm on the KBB board, so, but I just was curious as to what.
yeah, I mean, I will bring it to the TDC and see what they say, and, if they don't beat me up too bad and give me some direction and bring it to the board, we'll bring it to the board.
Wouldn't you have a better chance of getting it past the county commission if it's just coming out of the beach fund rather than the lagoon fund? Since they've already
I wish I had
chosen to
an
do
answer to
no
that question.
action on the lagoon fund.
Yeah, I wish I had an answer to that question. I just don't know the answer.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is that there'll be an onus on us to have more detail about our budget for next year. But unfortunately, without really understanding what the Army Corps is gonna be asking us for yet, I don't have a line of sight on that.
Yeah.
So I might not bring it right away. I might wait till like September to bring it till I have a more clear understanding of what Army Corps is gonna be on. Because if they said, hey, we only need 6 million instead of the 8 million, then I could say, well, we have, more funds than we thought we would have. I'd have something to say to them, but right now I don't have that. So, yeah, but at least getting direction from this group and the TDC, because this group doesn't meet again for a while. But I can at least get some input from the TDC, and then I'll bring it when I think we have the right information to hopefully get it.
Dr. Freeze?
Yeah, I do think kind of holding, if you've been out on our beaches, we are very vulnerable this year, probably as vulnerable as I've seen going into a hurricane season in a long time, and we keep our fingers,
Yeah,
fingers crossed, but the fact is all the conditions, the ocean water temperatures, the meteorological conditions right now aren't kind of leaning in our favor for an easy year. And of course, you can't predict this. So there's a chance,
yeah, if we get hit
we get hit
we're in
again,
trouble.
we're gonna see some, additional needs out of the beach fund.
Right,
So I think, and we've all said this before, protecting that is priority number one.
right. Yeah, and I think the board was pretty clear in its lack of action, on the IRL grants because of that. And so that's why I'm a little hesitant to jump right back in. And I think waiting till September and seeing where we are, both from a hurricane season perspective, but also from a budgetary perspective. So maybe even waiting till October might even be better, so.
With this hurricane season brings them.
Yeah.
Okay, if I can get a motion for adjournment,
So move.
second,
Second.
thank you very much.
Seawall, the new seawall.